Have you ever wondered why African Americans love Cadillac so much? Or did you know that Martin Luther King applied for a concealed handgun permit? Well, those are the two stories that we're going to talk about today. And if you would like to ask your own questions about African Americans, you can do so at onemikehistory.com in the contacts page. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on my Buy Me Coffee on my Patreon page in the description below. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and support the YouTube channel. But without further ado, let's get started. Have you ever wondered why Black people love Cadillacs? For African Americans, Cadillacs were not just a popular brand, but they became a symbol of success and pride. And as it turns out, Cadillacs didn't become a fan favorite of African Americans by accident. During the beginning of the 20th century, cars began to enter the American landscape. During that period, car makers started to pop up all over the place. In 1903 alone, 57 companies were established, but shortly thereafter, 27 of them went bankrupt. Cadillac, though, is one of the oldest and longest surviving brands in automotive history, having entered the market as General Motors' luxury brand in 1903. The brand was almost an immediate success and quickly developed a reputation for excellence in the automotive community because of their design and engineering. And, of course, they didn't sell to Black people. Cadillac was General Motors' top-of-the-line and most expensive product, but the company had an unwritten rule of not selling its cars to Black customers. But the Great Depression started to devastate the automotive market. Luxury manufacturers such as Cadillac faced a substantial decline in sales. In 1928, General Motors produced 1,700,000 vehicles, with 41,000 of them being Cadillacs. But by 1933, the production had dropped to just 780,000 vehicles, with only 7,000 of them being Cadillacs. That is the decline of 84%. And as the economy began to downturn, so did affluent white consumers. GM's executive committee would gather together in a meeting to make a decision on the future of the Cadillac division, who was losing so much money that they had plans to close the division down. Unexpectedly, Nicholas Drysdale, who was uninvited and in charge of GM's service department nationwide, knocked on the door and asked if he could just be heard for 10 minutes. The executive committee granted his request. Drysdale stated that he had a plan to make Cadillac profitable in 18 months. While traveling around the country and visiting different service departments, he had observed a significant number of African Americans in the service department at Cadillac dealership. They were members of the small African American elite, boxers, entertainers, lawyers, doctors, ministers, but they were not allowed to buy a new car in the showroom. Drysdale found out that Blacks were paying white frontmen $300 to purchase the cars for them. He asked the question, why should these men get several $100s to profit that should go to General Motors? So he proposed a radical idea to target the African-American elite by marketing a special Cadillac for them. He believed that it would be an important step towards Cadillac becoming a profitable business. By targeting the African-American elite, he could increase their presence in the luxury market and build a relationship with a new customer base. Drysdale urged the executive committee to go after the African-American market, or at least allow them to come into the showroom. GM would accept Drysdale's suggestion, and he would play a major role in the increased sales of Cadillac during the 1930s. While the Great Depression was still in full swing, in 1934, Cadillac sales rose 70%, leading to GM to sell enough vehicles to make the Cadillac division break even that year. Furthermore, from 1933 to 1941, sales increased from 6,000 units to 66,000 units. That is an increase of almost tenfold. So on June 10th of 1934, Drysdale was promoted to general manager of the Cadillac division. Now, Drysdale's initiative ending their racist sales policy in the 1930s apparently did not carry over to Cadillac's marketing division. The division wanted dealers to stop turning away Black customers, but it did very little to actually attract them. With the resurgence of the economy in the post-World War II era, Cadillac's print and television advertisements during that period continued to define excellence as white. This exclusionary advertising would extend all the way to the 1970s, with Cadillac portraying a world of glamour and excellence that only comprised of white people. But Cadillac wasn't the only one, because most automotive manufacturers during that time had advertisements that were completely white during the same time period. Additionally, individual car dealers maintained a significant degree of control over their showroom. According to renowned automotive journalist Warren Brown, his mother was unsuccessful in her attempt to purchase a new Cadillac from a dealership in New Orleans in the 1960s. However, she would ultimately be able to acquire her desired car, a 1965 Coupe de Ville, from a white man in a different location. Cadillac's diversity in marketing division served as a model for other divisions of General Motors and other automotive companies. This trend was primarily motivated by money more than morality. So that's how Cadillac became the first luxury car brand to intentionally market to Black consumers. And in this case, Cadillac's acknowledgement literally saved them from bankruptcy. Martin Luther King used to carry a weapon and even applied for a concealed handgun permit. In January of 1956, after his house was firebombed, Dr. Martin Luther King applied to the local sheriff for a concealed handgun permit. However, he was denied on the grounds that he was deemed unsuitable. Family members and friends were concerned for King's safety and urged him to hire a bodyguard or at least an armed watchman. But after a meeting with Bayard Rustin to show his support for the Montgomery bus boycott, the meeting would forever change King and the civil rights movement. King had read the philosophy of pacifism, but he had not yet embraced it into his life. When Bayard Rustin arrived in Montgomery, Dr. King and Coretta owned a gun, but Bayard Rustin's influence encouraged them to reconsider and accept pacifism as a way of life. King came to the realization that it would be hypocritical for him to carry a weapon even for his own protection, stating, "How could I serve as a leader of a nonviolent movement and at the same time use a weapon of violence for my own protection?" Harry Blafflin was a proponent of the eugenics movement and wrote the Model Eugenical Sterilization Law, which passed in Virginia on the same day as the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. This law allowed for the forced sterilization of individuals in state institutions under the assumption that it would be beneficial for them and for society. Concurrently, the Racial Integrity Act required the Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics to document the race of each newborn and made it illegal for white and non-white partners to wed. Collectively, these laws were meant to purify the white race. Eugenics was derived from the Greek word well and born, and it was a philosophical term of selective breeding that strives to remove undesirable qualities by hindering certain people from having children. Sir Francis Galton generated the term in 1883, portraying eugenics as the study of the influences that can advance or damage the hereditary qualities of future generations physically and mentally. As eugenics gained widespread support in the United States at the beginning of the 20th century, many states began to authorize doctors to forcibly sterilize their patients. When the Supreme Court upheld Virginia's eugenical sterilization law in Buck v. Bell in 1927, Virginia's law became the model of the rest of the country and facilitated the forced sterilization of more than 60,000 men and women nationwide. Virginia's law later was co-opted by Germany during World War II and was relied upon as a precedent for their race purity programs. After World War II, eugenical theory was heavily criticized, but the sterilization programs persisted long after the end of World War II. Thank you. I'm your host, Country Boy, and this has been One Mic History. I'm going to continue with this mini-series, and if you have questions or you just want to leave your comments, like I said, you can do so at onemichistory.com in the contact page. Thank you for listening, and peace.